the Honorable Sean K. Richards, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, the Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams, Junior Minister of Youth, Social Development, Community Development, Sports, BNTF, and People Empowerment in the Nevis Island Administration, Ms. Dwinette Eversley, Special Advisor, Commonwealth Youth Consultant, Mr. Stanley Knight, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, Ms. D. Michelle Liburd, Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Youth in the Nevis Island Administration, Mr. Pierre Liburd, Acting Director of Youth in the Department of Youth Empowerment, St. Kitts, Ms. Zanella Claxton, Director of Youth in the Ministry of Youth in the Nevis Island Administration, Ms. Joy Napier, CARICOM Youth Ambassador, staff of the Departments of Youth in both St. Kitts and Nevis, representatives from the various media houses, youth of our nations, listening and viewing audiences, I bid you a very pleasant good morning greeting. The Ministries of Youth in the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and the Nevis Island Administration are happy to meet today at this historic Ocean Terrace Inn to conduct this very milestone event in the life of the youth of our nation. This morning, we have come to launch the Federal Youth Policy Initiative, and also to welcome amongst us a very dignified representative from the Commonwealth Secretariat attached to this very important undertaking. We are happy, ladies and gentlemen of St. Kitts and Nevis, to be able to embark upon this initiative because it relates to the development and the well-being of our young people. And the Ministry of Youth has a very rigorous and robust program to cater to the needs and wishes of the youth of our nation. But we are seeking to enhance what we have to offer. We are seeking to better our programs. And in so doing, we are undertaking today to establish or revise what has been a 15-year document, draft policy for youth development in our country. And in so doing, we have come to create the awareness in the public and to elicit and solicit your involvement, your participation, your dialogue in this process. We are hoping that by the end of today's program, you'll understand more of what this Federal Youth Policy Initiative entails, and you'll be enthused to join us in this endeavor from now to the upcoming months. We will receive statements from dignified persons seated at this head table, and subsequently we will receive some questions from the media representatives who are here, who I presume have concerns or are bearing concerns from concerned people in the community. So, with no other ado, I'd like to call on the Honorable Sean K. Richards to make a few opening remarks and to establish the parameters under which or within which this initiative will be conducted. Please put your hands together for Mr. Sean K. Richards, the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Youth.
The Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams, Minister of Youth et al. Within the Nevis Island Administration, Mr. Vernon Connor, Special Advisor to the Minister of Youth, Ms. Dwinette Eversley, Commonwealth Youth Consultant, Mr. Stanley Knight, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Culture, Ms. D. Michelle Liebert, Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Youth in the Nevis Island Administration, Mr. Pierre Liebert, Acting Director of Youth in the St. Kitts Youth Empowerment Department, Ms. Zanella Claxton, Director of Youth in the Ministry of Youth, Nevis, CARICOM Youth Ambassador, Ms. Joy Napier, staff of the Youth Empowerment Department in both St. Kitts and Nevis, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen listening via radio and or television, youth of the Twin Island Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, good morning to all. Today marks a very significant and historic moment in the life of the Ministry of Youth and in the lives of every young person in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, as we gather today to launch a brand new federal youth policy initiative. We have heard the request of our young people for more attention, more involvement, more opportunity, and more action. Today, we are responding to these calls, and we are bringing to everyone's attention and creating an awareness of our federal youth policy initiative, which will seek to achieve the finalization of the existing draft National Youth Policy, which I came into office and met being worked on for the past 15 years. I support the development of a strategic action plan for implementation of the new youth policy. The objective of this initiative is therefore very clear and is twofold. One, it is to formalize a new youth policy which has currency and relevance to our young people. Two, to outline a cross-sectional strategic action plan that will translate the policy into time-bound youth development programs and activities across St. Kitts and Nevis. The federal youth policy is designed to be the central planning tool for youth interventions throughout the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. It is intended to serve as an overarching policy guide toward mainstreaming youth development in every ministry of government over the next 5 years. In describing the new youth policy, which we hope to achieve, I have mandated, as a young and vibrant minister myself, that this policy must be robust. It must be current, and it must meet the needs of the youth of our federation for the day and age. It must take into account all of the changes in the socio-economic landscape of our country and consider recent developments at the international levels on issues such as globalization, human rights, freedom of expression, gender equality, climate change, universal secondary education, and the advancement of information and communication technology. It must also be a policy that provides for accessibility, diversity, participation and social cohesion, volunteerism, transparency, sustainable development, social protection. These are all of the principles of the youth policy which are geared towards creating the ideal youth of compassion, creativity, discipline, culture, human dignity, moral and spiritual awareness, patriotism, economic participation, self-expression, and leadership. All policy values which will strengthen the capacities of our young people. In order to meet the aspirations of the young people of St. Kitts and Nevis, the updating will take into consideration their full contribution to national development and employ new, innovative, and holistic approaches to meeting their needs. It is for this reason that the Youth Policy Initiative will center around partnership. It will involve partnership between the two islands of our federation. That's why we are glad that the Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams and her team from the Ministry of Youth in the Nevis Island Administration are here. And we are happy that they have endorsed the project, and we are happy to thank them and also to welcome them. On the international level, we wish to thank UNESCO and the Commonwealth. UNESCO, through its partnership program, has volunteered to join the collaborative effort and has provided assistance through technical support and funding to aid in the reviewing of the draft federal policy with a view to strengthening its design and content to ensure that it is concurrent with international best practices while at the same time being true to the federal situation. Lastly, we are happy to secure the support of the Commonwealth Secretariat based in London, England. The Commonwealth, through its Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperation Program, CFTC, sponsored a youth expert to be resident amongst us for 6 months to provide technical advice and assistance in the development of the policy. The youth expert is here with us today in the person of the energetic and celebrated Ms. Dwinette Eversley. Ms. Dwinette Eversley is a national of Trinidad and Tobago, but she is also a Caribbean woman in her scope of work and heart. She comes to us highly recommended and highly qualified with much experience, many credentials. She is a youth policy expert, strategic planning and development consultant, social and youth development specialist, and she has her own consultancy firm, namely Empowerment Dynamics Limited. Ms. Eversley has received her schooling in several world-renowned institutions of learning in the USA, Canada, Sweden, and the Caribbean. She is no stranger to youth work and youth policy development, as she has practically been an icon in youth development projects for the majority of her adult life. She has worked on youth-related matters in almost every country in the Caribbean, including St. Lucia, Belize, the British Virgin Islands, Trinidad and Tobago, Dominica, Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Grenada, Guyana, and a list of other countries. Ms. Eversley, I wish to say a very special welcome to you to our federation, and we are confident that you will help us to deliver a youth policy of gold standard to the young people of St. Kitts and Nevis. In conclusion, I am therefore appealing to all young people to get on board with this initiative, whether you are a young man, young woman, youth with disability, unemployed youth, school-age youth, rural youth, youth heading a household, youth in conflict with the law and incarcerated youth, youth abusing dependency, creating substances, sexually abused or exploited youth, you are welcome. You are the targets of the youth policy. This initiative is for you. We want to address the many challenges you face and recommend solutions and measures for improvement. After this launch today, we will see our youth department staff and other volunteers coming to your communities for surveys and consultations. Receive them with an open spirit and cooperation. Get involved in the dialogue for change and improvement. I make a strong appeal to all youth groups and youth-serving institutions, our NGOs and faith-based organizations, all stakeholders engaged in interventions catering to our youth, to be enthusiastic about this venture, to own this cause and be part of the action. I end with the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who said, "We cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future. From today, young people, we are seeking to build you." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Youth, for this very clear and definitive statement. And we are happy that you have given us this mandate to seek to the betterment of the situations and conditions of our young people here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And most certainly, we commit ourselves to this task. As the Minister mentioned, this is a very important joint venture between St. Kitts and Nevis. And we are very happy for this because we are one federation, one big happy family. Our young people of St. Kitts and Nevis are important to us. And in that regard, we are glad to welcome on board our Nevisian counterparts. And so it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the Honorable Minister of Youth in the Nevis Island Administration, Ms. Hazel Vandy Williams, to make a few brief remarks as well. I invite a round of applause for her, please, as she speaks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Honorable Sean K. Richards, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture. Mr. Vernon Connor, Special Advisor to the Minister of Youth. Ms. Dwynette Eversley, Commonwealth Youth Consultant. Mr. Stanley Knight, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture. D. Michelle Liburd, Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Youth in the Nevis Island Administration. Mr. Pierre Liburd, Acting Director of Youth in the Department of Youth Empowerment, St. Kitts. Ms. Zanella Claxton, Director of Youth in the Ministry of Youth, Nevis. CARICOM Youth Ambassador, Ms. Joy Napier. Staff of the Department of Youth, members of the press, the general public listening to this press conference this morning, a pleasant good morning to all. It is indeed an honor for me to be part of this historic moment in youth development in our Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Words cannot express the sheer joy I feel this morning. As an individual who came up through the youth system and is very active in the church and community, I had the opportunity to gain hands-on experiences in relation to youth work. One of the important facts that I learned very early on is that a youth policy is very essential. A youth policy is a guiding document a point of reference of sorts for youths, youth groups, as well as youth practitioners. It is also an essential tool for success for any minister of youth and for every government. As such, when we came into office in 2013, my extensive experiences in the area of youth development and my zeal to implement programs which were aligned with our vision led me to inquire as to whether or not there was a national youth policy for our federation. To my dismay, I learned that there was a document, a working document, which has been a draft for the past 15 years. And therefore, it meant that the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis did not have a youth policy with which they were working. This led me to put several measures in place to prepare for this day, and I do welcome this day. I wait in anticipation, however, for the day when we could hold the completed document in hand. Youth development is dynamic. With all the continuous changes in trends, the emergence of new focuses areas and terminology, and the increased exposure to technology and technological advances, the need for our youth to have a working document and a proper document has long gone past its sell-by date. In fact, the needs of our young people have changed in many ways and in many shapes and forms over the past 15 years, and I dare say even over the last 5 years. As such, there is a need to ensure that this document is timely and reflects the current needs of our youths. Recently, I had the opportunity to address over 100 young people from across the Caribbean at the 4th Caribbean Youth Leaders Summit in Belize. The theme for the conference and for Caribbean Youth Day is Gender 2030, from rhetoric to action. The Sustainable Development Goals were at the forefront of these discussions. But one element which cannot be overlooked is the call for young people around the region to not just talk, but to ensure that our words transform to action. This youth policy is indicative of our commitment to move from rhetoric to action. I truly believe that every nation's future is mirrored in the investment which a nation is willing to make in youth. An investment which ensures that capacity building and sustainability are at its core. A youth policy provides a framework which allows for its belief to effectively come to fruition. The importance of the youth policy necessitates that meticulous and efficient steps are taken to the creation of the document. This means that youth policies should be sound, and I say very sound, documents. A sound youth policy is evidence-based. A sound youth policy is inclusive. A sound youth policy is youth-driven. A sound youth policy reflects the needs, the dreams, and aspirations of our youth. It is aligned with regional and international conventions, policies, and standards, and reflects input that most, if not all, stakeholders in youth development. Ms. Eversley has come to us through our partnership with the Commonwealth and UNESCO to ensure that our youth practitioners receive the necessary support to produce a youth policy which covers this and much more. And I must say that during your tenure here over the next 6 months, I know you will be very busy, but I implore you to take time out of your busy schedule to enjoy our warmth, enjoy the tranquility of the Twin Island Federation. Simply, in simple parlance, you are getting 2 for the price of 1. I take this opportunity to express my appreciation to these 2 international bodies which, like us, understand the importance of having a youth policy in every country. Ms. Eversley's mandate doesn't end here, as a youth policy is a broad document. She will work further with our youth practitioners to create a strategic plan of action for implementation as well. This means that you have a lot of work to do for the next 6 months. At the end of this process, our youth practitioners, and all stakeholders, including government, should possess the necessary fundamental skills to improve the services and opportunities offered to our young people. I know that this task may appear to be very challenging. I also know that Ms. Eversley, our youth practitioners, and most of all our young people are ready to face the challenges, and that would make your work much easier. We look forward to working along with all our young people for the duration of the process. Through our local steering committee and the Department of Youth and Sports, the Ministry of Social Development on Nevis as well. We are even more elated with this policy and strategic plan as it reflects the youths on both islands, and that activities would provide an equal opportunity for all youths across the Federation to make their input. And I reiterate that this policy would give all young people an opportunity to make an input so that they could have ownership to this policy. They can have total buying, and at the end of the day, the end product would be their product as well. I wish all stakeholders as seamless a process as possible. Contribute as much as you can. Learn as much as you can. Grow as much as you can. I challenge you to embrace every element of this process, as you are the most important pillars in the development process of our island. To all, I wish every success. Thank you.
Very succinct and profound statement made there by our Honorable Minister of Youth from the Nevis Island Administration, Miss Hazel Vandy Williams. Thank you very much, ma'am. And I would like to reflect one statement that you made. This policy must be evidence-based and youth-driven. And indeed, it will be evidence-based, because when this ceremony is ended today, young people will be visiting each community, collecting the evidence and data from every youth group and every young person in this nation. So this final product of youth policy will be the encapsulation of you, the young people here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Your thoughts, your ideas, your needs, your wishes. And therefore, we crave your enthusiasm, we crave your excitement, we crave your involvement, we crave every ounce of your time that you can contribute to making this policy as infinite as it can be. At this moment, I'd like to join with our Minister of Youth to express stately welcome to our Commonwealth Youth Consultant, I think our Honorable Minister of Youth, the Honorable Sean K. Richards, has spoken much about her, has given you her background and her qualifications. Therefore, there may not be need to rehearse this information. So therefore, I would like to say welcome, Ms. Eversley, to this table and to the hearts and minds of our young people here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we open to a few remarks from you at this podium.
Voila. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, the Honorable Sean K. Richards, the Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams, Junior Minister of Youth, and other sector responsibilities in the Nevis Island administration. Mr. Knight, Mr. Stanley Knight, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Ms. Michelle Liebert, the Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Youth in the Nevis Island administration, the Director of Youth in the Department of Youth in St. Kitts, Mr. Liebert, Pierre Liebert, Ms. Zanella Claxton, the Director of Youth in the Ministry of Youth in Nevis, the youth representative here from the CARICOM Youth Ambassador Corps, Ms. Napier, youth workers, staff of the ministry in St. Kitts and in Nevis, young people who may be listening, hello, good morning, and thanks to the media. Media, I want to say you're here now. I'm very pleased to see you, and I want to enjoin you as responsible agents of change and public opinion to stay focused and to stay with the ministry in this important task ahead for the finalization of a national youth policy and strategic action agenda for Nevis, St. Kitts and Nevis. So, thank you. Thank you, Minister, for the warmth of your welcome, ministers. I am delighted to be here. I want to share that I first came to St. Kitts and Nevis in the 1990s, late 1990s. And I was immediately struck by the hills and how green everything was. And I lapsed into song, which I shall not do now. But, you know, life is cyclical and the things that you do rebound. And the joy I felt then is very similar to what I feel now, particularly because I know how important the role that I was entrusted with is to the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, and certainly to the young people in the Federation. But I wanted to make this brief intervention in the context of why I'm here and what I need to achieve and what I will achieve with the cooperation of all interested stakeholders. And all interested stakeholders is the entire population. I often challenge people to tell me which sector in a national ecosystem are young people not involved or not implicated. And of course, if you consider that question, you know that there is no sector which does not relate to young people and their development. And this is the premise of youth policy. As the Honorable Brandy Williams already enunciated, young youth policy is a sum of all national initiatives that are designed, the sum of all national initiatives across all sectors, public, private, civil society, but grounded in the responsibility of government as accountable for development and youth development. I will discuss later on that it is a right, and it is shrouded in the whole concept of rights, of human rights. But a youth policy consolidates all the national initiatives. And that is why I congratulate the government on its dedication and its commitment to achieving this policy and the strategic action agenda. Because when we say it consolidates all initiatives, we begin immediately to understand that we are establishing a blueprint for cross-sectional cooperation, for more accountability in the management of scarce human and financial resources, so that what we do everywhere for young people can be measured and we can see the success outcomes. And this is a tremendous initiative, and it is to be congratulated and supported. Now, there is no international standard document that denotes this is a youth policy, but there are several principles which we are enjoined to follow and to which the Commonwealth also subscribes. Last year, or in 2014, the first global global forum on international youth policies was held in Baku, which is in Azerbaijan. And that international forum concluded with a communique establishing the principles around which youth policies should be formulated. And I want to crave your indulgence by just reiterating them for you. And there are about 8 basic policies. And the minister in his address already mentioned the concept and the principles for youth policy development, both ministers. But I want to set them out clearly as they have been enunciated in the Baku commitment to youth policies. 1, youth policies should be rights-based. And that means they are founded and grounded within the International Human Rights Treaty framework, to which St. Kitts and Nevis and all other countries would be party. And so when we are looking at youth policy with development, we look first and foremost at the International Human Rights framework that the country has adopted, because youth development is a human right. Youth are human, youth rights are human rights, youth development is a right. Youth policy should be comprehensive and cross-sectional. Again, both ministers alluded to this in their remarks. Across sections, no one ministry or department manages a national youth portfolio. That is why there is need for thorough analysis and cross-sectionality and intersectionality in the management and the drafting of a policy. Youth policies should be democratic and participatory. They must involve as a significant component all young people in the framing of the policy and in how the policy is allowed to unfold, and in the scope for the implementation of the policy. And when we talk about democratic and participatory, we mean also that the policy is creating a space for young people to feel that they belong. And we know that this is an issue. It is a scope for citizenship, it's a scope for social capital, it's a scope for belonging. Youth policies should be inclusive, that is, take into concern the issues, aspirations, and the development trajectories of all youth. And youth is not a homogeneous construct. When we say the word youth, it's a blank carpet. But when we start to picture who are the youth for whom we are framing policy, then we begin to understand that it is a broad and diverse section of young people. And there are many different complexities within that construct. And that is what a policy must capture. And a policy captures that by being evidence-based. Data. We need to find out what is true. And we do this by primary research, going out to meet the young people themselves, and by secondary research, the richness of data that is already here in the Federation, which we use, which we assess, which we collate, which we analyze for the purposes of the policy. And I would like to say, ministers, and I'm sure you already know this, that the use of data and the application of data to our work involves a paradigm shift for most countries of the region. Traditionally, we are more oratorially inclined. Look at, in my own country, I come from Trinidad and Tobago, that oral tradition translated into the way we talked about all social issues and political issues through the medium of calypsos. But it's not only a tradition of Trinidad and Tobago, it is a decided Caribbean tradition. And perhaps it is something that we need to consider how we can use those rich traditions to really capture data, because we need to use data not only to build policy, but to monitor and measure the impacts of those policies and to see whether they are making a difference for the young people. And youth policy must also be fairly budgeted and financed. And this is always an issue. And that is why I started by saying the consolidation of initiatives under one policy document is a way of managing resources that are not always easy to come by. Youth policy should be gender sensitive and promote the principles of gender equality as provided for in human rights frameworks. And last but not least, it should be accountable. We already talked about, and we will not ever stop talking about, the issue of monitoring, accountability, success, outcomes. I want to indicate that the Commonwealth Secretariat is committed to this process, and I'm pleased to be able to be their agent in this, in working with the authorities in St. Kitts and Nevis to achieve what is your own vision and dream for young people. The Commonwealth Secretariat has supported youth policy, is currently supporting youth policy development in Dominica and St. Lucia. And you also know that there are other youth policy initiatives that are going on for the whole OECS. This is why I also wanted to make it clear that youth policy that is formulated and finalized for St. Kitts and Nevis will take into consideration these global and regional policy documents, because they must. That is the framework on which we build policy. Evidence, data, and the available UN, CARICOM, and Commonwealth documents. I also want to point out that in recent times, the Commonwealth produced a Youth Development Index, which measures in 5 significant domains the status of young people in Commonwealth countries and their well-being. And I want to say that of all the Commonwealth Caribbean countries, the measurements received, none of the Commonwealth Caribbean countries scored high in terms of the Youth Development Index. When the circumstances of youth in relation to education, employment, health and well-being, civic participation, and political participation were measured. I mention those domains because the youth development, the youth policy will relate to achieving success outcomes among those domains with strategic directions that emanate from those domains. But we want to improve, we want to see a significant improvement in the performance of St. Kitts and Nevis. And this is why, again, I want to close by saying that I'm very committed to this exercise, to supporting the clear lead that Minister Sean Richards has enunciated, that Minister Hazel Brandy Williams has enunciated, and to also say that youth policy must be owned by the young people. It must be owned by the young people, but it must be owned also by all the sectors that do not think that they are soft sectors, such as finance or planning or the economy or what other sectors may exist, because in our years of experience, this has been an issue that we have always faced. Oh, it's not a soft sector. It's a technical sector. So youth do not, that's for somebody else to do. It's for all of us to do. And by this launch, I want to encourage and enjoin everyone that it is all of our business. And while my colleague, Mr. Connor, quoted Roosevelt, I want to bring it closer to the Caribbean. And I always look to Martin Carter, that tremendously prolific and brilliant Guyanese poet. And I just want to quote one line of his poem because it relates to what I have to say about the youth policy. He said, when he was quoting, when he was speaking about very hard times in Guyana, that all are involved and all are consumed. It is the same thing for youth policy. All are involved. All must be consumed with the passion to get it right. And if that is the case, all will certainly benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Eversley, for your very extensive and comprehensive discourse, and indeed for the amount of advice that you have already begun to give from this presentation today. We see that you are truly